Welcome to Forever White Belt. I'm your host, Adolfo Foronda. Today's going to be a solo episode. I haven't done one of these since 2019, I think it was, where I did it with my friend Travis Model from the Elbows Type podcast. I believe it was an end of year prediction type of thing and recap, and I felt like it was time that I should do something to that effect. Last time, let's recap. Previous prediction was, I believe in 2019, I predicted a recession that would impact BJJ. I think I was right. I think I nailed it in a way. If you guys remember, there was a redefinition of the term recession. They literally redefined it. That particular administration, for whatever reason, did so. I would argue that recession was also hidden within something called inflation that we have seen the explosion thereof, sort of the frog in the proverbial boiling pot, getting slowly warmer and warmer as your prices go higher and higher. Now, you can call it not a recession or just inflation, but either way, our value of our currency dropped significantly relative to the things that we'd been able to purchase before in the various amounts that we had before, right? So to me, that kind of nails recession. So there was that. Let's move on to how I see current trends going. So 2024 was a very interesting year for Jiu-Jitsu. We were finally out of this malaise of the previous few years and really firing on all cylinders. You got to give it to Craig Jones and the rise of the Craig Jones Invitational, CJI. Everyone was looking at it in a way with doubt that perhaps it won't do what it was stating that it would. $1 million prize, competing with ADCC, if that was going to work or not. And boy, did it deliver. In fact, I would say, and this isn't really much of a, prediction or a statement to say, is that it has become the gold standard. The rounds are amazing. The karate octagon with the tilted walls, very interesting. It was just all around exciting. The curation of competitors, making it just literally the tip top elite of the elite, was really great. I could probably do without like the Gabby versus Craig type of stuff. Maybe that has some sort of draw for some people. I did enjoy all the humor. I enjoyed Hanato as well, Larange. But I'm sure the show will improve, and it's amazing. So conversely, let's look at the other events too. So the plateauing of ADCC. In my opinion, ADCC is what it is, right? So it's still very prestigious. The best want to go there, depending on where you are in your career. Does $1 million, did you get an invitation? What's going to draw you to it or not? It's definitely the elite of amateurs turning into professionals, and even for professionals, it's the place to be. And then we have the IBJJF, which I would argue is the best of the amateurs kind of place. We still see professionals going there to some extent, but it doesn't have the cachet that it did previously, right? It just doesn't, especially with the ADCC and CGI now. And then let's talk about the others. There are so many other options now biting at the heels and coming up in these sort of lower tier type of events that are definitely on the rise, one of which is the PGF. So the PGF is very interesting in that it started out in very different sort of ways. They're talking about doing team things and all kinds of stuff. Originally in Decatur, Alabama, and now takes place in Las Vegas, and it's very exciting. A lot of money behind it. It's gaining some traction. Not quite at the level of CGI or ADCC yet, but definitely among the other tops. So speaking thereof, we have, combat jiu-jitsu, solid performance, always. People love that. Very different type of event, right? But still very exciting, and there is a demand for it. Additionally, we have AIGA and Polaris and other events such as that are very interesting, team events and very international type of events, and very exciting. And they draw huge names, which is great. It just gives more opportunity. So that was a really interesting trend in 2024. Another trend is obviously ecological training or constraints-led approach, whatever you want to call it, has really gained a foothold, I think, in the zeitgeist of jiu-jitsu. At the very least, you've heard of it. If not, you're not practicing it. I haven't seen a great deal of just 100% adoption in terms of like replacing an entirely normal quote unquote curriculum of various schools and the way that they are teaching. But I think several instructors are now experimenting with the use of this type of approach to training and teaching. I definitely see the spread of it, and there will be wider spread adoption, obviously. And I'm not going out on a limb to predict that, but I really think that's happening. And whether it morphs into something else or we change the name of it or whatever it may be, so be it. But it's definitely, I think it's here to stay in some form and another. I'm curious to see how it's going to evolve in itself and how it's going to be incorporated into this intersection that we're at in terms of traditional instruction and this different paradigm. I know there have been other attempts, such as the upside down classroom and other very interesting type of things. Because let's face it, I think we all, or several of us, have thought, how can we improve this? How can we improve this form of instruction and student adoption, and not only make white belts learn quicker and make people better quicker, but also the depth of learning. How can I learn this in a deeper type of way as well and deliver the information in a better type of way? So it's interesting to see that all these experimentations are happening and that this constraints-led approach curriculum has spread so widely, especially in 2024, gained traction. Okay, and the continued bifurcation of gi versus no gi, two, I would argue, completely different sports, arts, whatever it may be you want to call it at this point. Almost completely different, not totally different, obviously. But from a sport perspective, yeah, very different, right? You don't see a lot of crossover anymore. You're either in it from the beginning and becoming great or not. So I think those two trains have went in two very different directions. Now, another one that I'm seeing, and I'm surprised more people aren't talking about yet, is subscription fatigue. This is huge. This is huge. Riding on my previous predictions of this recession or whatever it may be. I don't know what's going to happen now because we're in a really funny time with this. As of recording this, this new administration coming in and the market performing the way it is. And I'm talking specifically from a U.S. perspective, but you can look at it internationally as well, how things are sort of up and down, swinging very up, very down, and just it's kind of weird. And I'm not quite sure what's going to happen right now. But one thing I do know is that the consumers are fatigued big time. And with inflation, it's been quite challenging to afford everything that we used to afford with the ease that we did previously, if you can even call that ease. You have your mainstays, right? Let's just take a typical lifestyle here, right? Your utilities, your garbage, your water, your groceries, your rent or mortgage, whatever it may be, your vehicle, right? All payments of the vehicle or insurance, home insurance. I'm not even talking about those type of things. And then you have the other high priority things, right? And then we come down to things like your Netflix, your whatever it may be, your streaming service that you have throughout your house, your typical cable, your cell phone bill, right? Some people would say that is an essential item as well, an essential cost. And then you go down to other things, another tier, which may be your regular gym membership, if you have one of those where you're just lifting weights and going swimming, etc., or whatever it may be, your yogas, whatever. Now that is combating kind of in a way with jiu-jitsu, right? Or you could say jiu-jitsu is even one below that, depending on the type of individual you are or where that falls in terms of your budget with your family or yourself. On top of that, other online type of jiu-jitsu instruction, right, is subscriptions. And we're seeing everyone do it. Whether you have Lachlan Giles service, everyone's offering online services now, right? Everyone. And then not only that, or online coaching, you have your Patreons or whatever your platform may be to teach online. So all these sort of touring seminar instructors or famous instructors or even local instructors that are trying to gain an online presence because the barrier to entry is zero now. You can get in and just start your own thing. Hell, Forever White Belt has $1 a month subscription, right? So I'm curious to see how that is going to evolve and how people are going to get creative with that, because it seems sort of dime a dozen now. There's just a dearth of subscriptions, and this whole argument of like it's just a cost of a cup of coffee a month argument no longer holds water. Pardon the pun, because if you just add up all your other subscriptions, you can't afford another cup of coffee, so to speak, another subscription. I mean, some of you may, But boy, is it saturated, right? It is saturated. So subscription fatigue is huge. If you want to differentiate yourself, you're going to have to get really creative. I've seen some people like my friend Josh Janis, who's a coach, who's been on the show too, who has a online offering where he's offered something like, if you're a subscriber, you get effectively a free seminar. If I come into your town and you're a subscriber, you get into the seminar for free. Very interesting. That's just one person, right? So there are thousands and thousands of other individuals out there that are offering subscription. So you got to get creative if you're going to offer some sort of subscription. The old just pay monthly and here's some techniques. I don't know how sustainable and scalable that is at this point. Everyone's paying for fancy marketing. Everyone's paying for fancy social media, and everyone's offering really quality stuff. So subscription fatigue, I think, is one of my predictions of the rise of AI. I have to mention AI, sort of obligatory. You got to, right? I think it's almost non-existent in Jiu-Jitsu at this point. I know there are some offerings. I know my friend Sean, who runs Jiu-Jitsu, has an AI chatbot, is what he's calling it. He might have renamed it by now, but it's an AI tool for Jiu-Jitsu. Very interesting. I believe another individual who runs, I think it's Less Impressed, More Involved, or has an AI type of thing to search effectively for like moves, and then it'll link to a particular spot in various competitions. So you can see all these uses of it. Very interesting type of offering. But I'm interested to see how this is it's got to impact Jiu-Jitsu in some capacity. I just don't know what yet. So very sort of toes dipping in approach to AI and my Jiu-Jitsu prediction, if you can even call it that. Peptides for recovery. I have to bring up peptides. They've really stormed onto the scene of the whole athletic scene and the biohacking scene. It's permeated out to a lot of people now. I think the use of peptides and the experimental use of peptides as well for all kinds of things. I think at this point, BPC 157 is the front runner and that everyone's been using it, or a lot of people have, and I myself have quite a bit. You've heard it probably on several different podcasts. I know lots of professional athletes have been using it for recovery purposes. Anecdotally, it's helped me quite a bit, and so that I can continue kind of training with a torn shoulder and help me recover very quickly with a torn MCL, which helped in conjunction with something called TB500, another peptide. They call that the Wolverine stack, those together. And there's a slew of other peptides coming on the scene as well as available now. This is not medical advice at all. You make your own decisions. And I think we're going to see more widespread adoption of the use of peptides and obviously other type of solutions for recovery. Now, another thing that happened in 2024, no surprise, right? The year of the podcast. Effectively, sway elections at this point. And you see now celebrities and film stars now going on podcasts where usually they would do a talk show, big celebrities who would normally not be caught dead on podcasts. Same thing with Jiu-Jitsu now, right? It's a huge influence. Guilty as charged. I am a podcaster, right? But there's a ton of other just fantastic Jiu-Jitsu podcasts out there, and all have various different sort of flavors and offerings. It's huge. In terms of products as well, I'm getting approached quite a bit from various different vendors. I'm not big on advertising, but hey, I definitely listen to various things, and if I like it, just like anyone else who says this a million times, if we like the product, we're going to talk about it. It's interesting to see how more and more, I think that's going to grow. And I think the brands, bigger and bigger brands, are going to come into the market when they see how much of an influence that the power of podcasting is. And what's additionally interesting is the dearth of podcasting. There are so many podcasts out there now that you're highly unlikely to be successful. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying that at this point, in terms of all podcasts, I believe it was only a recent statistic was something like 10 or 12 podcasts are really the ones that are moving the entire podcast industry. And I'm sure it further sort of distills down into various different verticals, right? Jiu-Jitsu even probably being one of them as well. I'm sure there are thousands or hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Jiu-Jitsu podcasts out there. And I'm sure a handful of them are really the only ones that are really, really moving the needle. That being said, I think there's room for consolidation, right? Or networking in terms of Jiu-Jitsu podcasts or whatever it may be. In terms of, I'm surprised there hasn't been more partnering yet. I haven't seen the best sort of efforts yet in terms of like trying to pool podcast, like a podcast type of jiu-jitsu network sort of together. But there are some rumblings of that type of thing happening. I'm surprised that the bigger ones haven't partnered together yet. I think we're going to see some partnering going on and some jiu-jitsu podcast networks start to appear. And I'm looking forward to that. It should be very interesting. Another thing that's really, I was hoping would sort of go away, but it's human nature and it's not going to stop. It's, predictions, BJJ drama. As of this recording, we're seeing all kinds of different stuff in terms of, drama within the community. Now, I don't know if this is like people are bringing it up for legitimate purposes or it just helps their social awareness in terms of their own brand. It's kind of it's not my thing. Some people really love it, love the drama in kind of a WWE type of way, or actually legitimately trying to call out people who are doing negative things within the community. But yeah, I think this just continues. I think it's human nature. I think you're going to have increased BJJ drama in 2025. So touching back on the economy, I'm curious to see what you guys are seeing in terms of, where you're at. Where I'm at in California, it was hit pretty hard. It's interesting though, because you might be seeing some plateauing memberships, again, depending on where you are versus past growth due to the economy and increased gym opening saturation, right? So maybe you're just plateauing because other gyms are opening and sort of the pie is not, in terms of practitioners, because your demographic doesn't increase, right? Population stays relatively the same, sort of where you are. But if you have more schools opening, then your sort of growth kind of plateaus, right? Because it's just more schools opening within your community. So I think that's going to increase as we see more and more black belts be minted, and that number is growing and growing every day. And a few of them have aspirations to open their own academies. And I think the easy money is going away, so to speak, in jiu-jitsu. I am curious if we will see an increase in jiu-jitsu growth. Casuals, hobbyists, whatever you may want to call it, the growth of people actually participating in it versus the normal uptake and cycle. I'm curious if the sport really is growing in that scale, such as, pickleball. Look at that explosion. Jiu-jitsu, I don't know. It's something to look out for is the growth of casuals versus the usual dropout rate. Like I mentioned before, the increased competition in your demographic or just blue belt blues, the whole usual sort of drop off of the attrition, what happens. At the end of the year, I'm trying to reflect on 4 questions, one of which was, what did I change my mind about, right? What did you change your mind about? I used to think there were certain ways of doing certain things in jiu-jitsu. And what I've come to conclusion is that there is no wrong and everyone is right, sort of, so to speak, right? One of the things I've mentioned before on the show is as I talk to more and more of these professionals, academy owners, whatever it may be, oftentimes they have opposing viewpoints and they are at the elite level and having success. Right. And I don't always agree with everyone I have on and all of their opinions or their particular approach to jiu-jitsu, but that's fine. It's open forum. It's great. But are they wrong? No, no, it works for them, obviously. Right. Even though it's not my thing, it works for them. So I come to conclusion, if it works for you, it works for you. What drained you in 2024? It's something sort of important to reflect on. For me, it was injuries. 2024 was tough for me. It was very tough. The grade 3 MCL tear really sidelined me pretty bad. And I'm currently dealing with a torn shoulder, really torn up shoulder. And so I've been rolling with 3 limbs effectively throughout the entire year. And it's really impacted the way I approach the game, if I can even play. Injuries has drained me. And so that is a huge priority for me. And this upcoming year is strengthening certain things, movement, sustainability, longevity. So yeah, I'm curious, what drained you, in 2024? And then another question is, who are the anchors in your life? I heard a saying quite some time ago that's always stuck in my head when I heard it was, you're only as good as your worst friend. You're only as good as your worst friend. So when you think of that, you think of that anchor, right? What is holding you back relative to where you are? It's something to just sort of meditate on, and think about who are the anchors in your life and reflect on that. And then the final question is, what did I not do because of fear? I don't know. I don't even know if I want to share that on here. But what did you do because of fear? So anyways, that was recap, predictions, what's to come, sort of a mishmash of it all. I hope you have a fantastic 2025. I look forward to going through all this together. I'm glad we made it through 2024 together, and that I love the sport. And thank you all for listening, and thank you all for being guests that I've had on the show. You're fantastic. See you guys next time.